Rani is one of the most intriguing antagonists in Doctor Who. She is often talked about being in the pantheon of other memorable antagonists that were established in the classic era of the show, like the Daleks, the Master, Cybermen, Sontarans, and Ice Warriors. Yet, her introduction came at a time when the classic run was on a decline, and the stories that she appeared in aren't exactly regarded as some of the greatest. One in particular is actually considered as one of the worst. When Doctor Who came back to the screens in 2005, and antagonists such as Dalek, Cybermen, the Master, and Sontarans gradually made their return, the return of the Rani became talk amongst fans. But what makes this antagonist so appealing and desirable to bring back amongst Whovians? Let's have a look at the Mark of the Rani that has been left on Doctor Who and the show's fans. Rani was created by the husband and wife writing duo Pip and Jane Baker, following encouragement from then script editor Eric Saywood to write a story with a historical setting. Her conception was also influenced by producer John Nathan Turner, who felt that the Master had become too pantomime in tone. The solution? A new Time Lord villain, one with scientific detachment rather than theatrical villainy. Where the Master is this power-hungry megalomaniac, the Rani is an amoral scientist. Her cruelty doesn't come from a desire to conquer, but from an unflinching dedication to experimentation. She sees lesser species, essentially everyone other than Time Lords, as valid test subjects. What might seem barbaric to us is, in her mind, clinical necessity. Sheen defends her ethics by comparing her work to the way humans treat animals. One further influence was a remark made by a chemist friend of the Bakers, who coldly stated, "All you are is chemicals." This worldview fed directly into the Rani's dehumanizing scientific philosophy, particularly evident in her two televised appearances. Cast in the role fell to Kate O'Mara, a star of British television and film known for her glamorous, commanding presence, and with that she brought exactly the mix of elegance and menace the character required. The Rani made her debut in 1985's The Mark of the Rani, set during the Industrial Revolution. The Sixth Doctor and Peri arrive in the mining village of Killingworth, having been diverted from their intended trip to Kew Gardens. They soon encounter local miners behaving violently, assumed by locals to be Luddites, rebelling against mechanisation. In reality, it's the work of the Rani. She's been abducting miners and extracting the chemical that allows them to sleep, intending its use to pacify the population of Mycema Goria, a planet she rules. Her scientific amorality is immediately on display. Humans are just lab rats in her eyes. To further complicate matters, the Master is also present, scheming as always, to twist Earth development for his own gain. His plan is to manipulate the innovations of George Stephenson and other industrial pioneers to accelerate Earth's technological growth and eventually dominate the planet. He sees the Rani's scientific talents as a useful tool in that pursuit. What makes this story particularly compelling is the dynamic between the Doctor, the Master, and the Rani. The Doctor presents moral conviction, fighting injustice. The Master embodies chaos and obsession with control. And the Rani, she's largely indifferent to both men's theatrics, focused purely on her experiments. She's not interested in conquest, as she already has a world to rule. Her cold logic and disdain for emotion entanglements make her a unique addition to the Time Lord Rogues gallery. The Rani initially sees the Master's interference and the Doctor's arrival as nuisances, yet she's eventually persuaded, more out of scientific curiosity than allegiance, to aid the Master in his plan. Despite this alliance, she remains fiercely independent, though. For Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor, this story marks an early softening of his character following the poorly received twin dilemma. Here, he shows greater empathy towards Peri and the locals. The introduction of the Rani and the Master as foils may have helped highlight this shift, contrasting more heroic traits. Visually, the Mark of the Rani stands out as one of the best-looking stories of the era. Filming at Bliss Hill Victorian Town and Coalport China Museum in Shropshire gives the episode a rich, authentic atmosphere. The Rani's TARDIS, which is lavish and unique, adds further depth to her character and positions her as a technological equal or even superior to the Doctor and the Master. However, the story isn't without its flaws. The villain's plans are revealed far too early, leading to repetition and a loss of dramatic tension. And the climatic scene involving landmines that turn victims into trees, whilst imaginative on paper, ends up being unintentionally laughable on screen. Nonetheless, Rani's introduction offered something fresh at a time when Doctor Who was increasingly seen as stale. Her barbed commentary on the Doctor and the Master's schoolboy rivalry, her scathing quips, and Kate O'Mara's glamorous performance make her a standout. O'Mara clearly enjoyed the role, and her portrayal brought style and authority that contrasted sharply with both Colin Baker's evolving Doctor and the increasingly overused Master. So memorable was this debut that producer John Nathan Turner was planning on making the Rani a recurring villain, a new rival Time Lord to revitalise the show as the Master risked becoming tired and predictable. Her next appearance, Time and the Rani, was once again written by Pip and Jane Baker and aired in 1987 as the opening story of season 24 and marked a new beginning for Doctor Who in several ways. A fresh title sequence, a new composer, a new tone, and most notably, the introduction of Sylvester McCoy as the Seventh Doctor. It's also infamous for being one of the most poorly received stories of the classic era, and unfortunately, not even the return of the Rani could save it. The story begins abruptly with the TARDIS under attack and the Sixth Doctor regenerating to the Seventh, with no clear explanation beyond what fans later learned was a behind-the-scenes necessity following Colin Baker's sacking. Rani, once again played by Kate O'Mara, is behind the ambush, disguising herself as companion Mel and manipulating the disoriented, newly regenerated Doctor into helping her with a convoluted plan involving brain energy and kidnapped geniuses, including none other than Albert Einstein. Set on the planet Lacertia, the Rani scheme is to construct a giant time manipulator using the minds of Earth's greatest thinkers, intending to harness strange matter to control the evolution of the universe itself. It's a plan that's both wildly ambitious and utterly baffling in execution, serving more as a cartoonish backdrop than a credible threat. The Doctor must recover his memory, see through her disguise, and put an end to her plot before she alters the fabric of time itself. Unfortunately, Time in the Rani flounders in several key areas. The tone is jarringly lightweight, undermining any sense of threat. The Lacertians, the native species, are poorly developed and serve little purpose beyond exposition. The special effects and costumes lack polish, and even the sets, though colourful, feel more pantomime than science fiction. The story also suffers from over-the-top performances, with Sylvester McCoy still finding his footing and Bonnie Langford's Mel written with little nuance. And yet, Kate O'Mara brings that charisma to the role of the Rani, even when saddled with subpar material. She gamely impersonates Mel, though it's clearly O'Mara doing a parody of Langford's high-energy performance, and revels in the role's theatricality. But compared to the Mark of the Rani, her character here is flattened. The cold, calculating scientist we once met is now reduced to a cackling villain with a silly plan. The immoral logic that once distinguished her is replaced with generic evil, dismissing her uniqueness. Visually, the story at least tries to be vibrant. With the rocky landscape of Lacertia, we still have a garnish of alien worlds full of colour and spiralling effects. But much like the rest of the story, it feels more like visual noise than meaningful design. The story's most memorable moment is arguably its most infamous. The regeneration scene, where Sylvester McCoy wears a curly blonde wig to portray the Sixth Doctor mid-transformation. Despite its flaws, Time in the Rani is historically significant. It launched a new era for the show and gave us our first glimpse of a Doctor who, while clownish here, would later evolve into the series' most mysterious and calculating incarnation. But as a platform for the Rani's return, it fails to do justice to the character. Her potential as a recurring foil to the Doctor, once full of promise, was squandered by turning her into a stock villain in a forgettable story. It's telling, then, that Time in the Rani was the last proper television appearance of the Rani in the classic run of Doctor Who. The character's uniqueness, her scientific detachment, her disdain for both the Doctor and the Master were lost in favour of cheap spectacle and unconvincing stakes. Still, Kate O'Mara gives it her all, and the story remains a fascinating case study into how production changes, tonal mishaps, and underdeveloped scripts can waste a promising character. The Rani's debut in 1985 was refreshing and full of potential, and while 1987's Time of the Rani was a step backwards for the character, there had been further plans for her development. One such idea was yellow fever and how to cure it, a proposed Sixth Doctor story written by Robert Holmes that would have also featured the Master, the Brigadier, and the Autons. Sadly, this was scrapped during the show's 18-month hiatus, with Trial of the Time Lord eventually taking its place. When Doctor Who ended in 1989, the Rani's journey into the series seemed over. One of many ideas with the potential to reinvigorate the show never ultimately materialised. But it wasn't quite the end. In 1993, as part of Children in Need and the show's 30th anniversary, the BBC produced Dimensions in Time, a charity special that briefly brought Doctor Who back to our screens. In this story, the Rani traps multiple incarnations of the Doctor and his companions in a bizarre time loop set in Albert Square, the fictional home of EastEnders. The plot was chaotic, out of character for the Rani, and clearly played for laughs. Its short runtime and crossover gimmick give it the feel of a novelty rather than a celebration, and it left somewhat a sour final note on the legacy of classic Doctor Who. Still, the decision to use the Rani as the primary villain reflected the character's enduring popularity and perceived potential. Even in such a camp setting, her presence hinted at what could have been, and perhaps what still could be. As mentioned earlier, when Doctor Who returned as a full-time series in 2005, many iconic villains eventually reappeared, but the Rani remained locked in the classic series and audio dramas. Over the years, speculation persisted. Fans theorised that characters such as Rose Tyler, River Song, and Missy might secretly be the Rani in disguise, but none were. Then, in 2023, during the early days of the 15th Doctor's era, we were introduced to the mysterious Mrs. Flood, played by Anita Dobson, a character dressed in costumes echoing the past, who would break the fourth wall and mysteriously appear wherever the Doctor went. Finally, on the 17th of May 2025, just over 40 years since her debut, the Rani returned. Mrs. Flood was revealed to be a bi-generated incarnation of the Rani, with a new form played by Archie Panjabi, ushering in a new era for the character. Kate O'Mara, who sadly passed away in 2014, never had the chance to give her Rani a definitive conclusion, yet her performance laid the groundwork, just as Roger Delgado did for the Master, or Michael Wisher did for Davros. The Rani remains one of Doctor Who's most enigmatic villains, a cold, amoral scientist whose intellectual ruthlessness sets her apart from the likes of the Master, and who often dominates scenes with a sharp charisma, particularly when standing off against the Doctor. Still, despite her strengths, the Rani has never quite had her magnum opus. Perhaps this new incarnation, brought to life through Anita Dobson and Archie Panjabi, will finally give her the story worthy of her potential. But what do you think? Does the Rani deserve a place among Doctor Who's most iconic villains? Will her return, and her portrayal by new actors, evolve the character into something truly legendary? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, it's the end. The moment has been prepared for.